Hey guys, so far we've been talking about how to write paragraphs. And as you probably know, an essay is a combination of paragraphs. So there's a lot more rules to it than that, but that's kind of the really short version. So now we're going to kind of talk about transitioning to essays and some of the differences between the paragraphs that you've been writing and the larger works that we're going to start writing in the coming weeks. I want to apologize if my voice is a little bit off or if I seem stuffed up. I have been under the weather this week, but I really wanted to get this lecture up so that you would have this resource available to you. So let's go ahead and get started. So far we've focused on what we've called paragraphs, but we've actually been writing the body paragraphs for an essay. We've been writing just one of them at a time to kind of focus on the structure of those. And that's why I've been so heavily focused on structure in those paragraphs, is because later on they needed to be able to function as part of a larger work. So in a body paragraph, as you know, there are three main parts. There's the topic sentence, which states the purpose of the paragraph. There's the exposition, where you introduce, present, and analyze evidence. And there's the transition, where you summarize the main points and the significance. So here's a hamburger. And we'll come back to the hamburger a lot. The hamburger is, for some reason, a really popular metaphor for paragraphs and essays among English teachers. I think we're just all really hungry. But you can see that the topic and transition sentences, this site used conclusion sentence, which I might start using because I actually like it better, but as the bread, and in the middle you have your filling, your meat, your vegetables, your, anything like that. So you have, this is kind of a overview of a paragraph. Topic sentence. Supporting sentence one could be introduce your point. This could be present your evidence. This could be analyze your evidence. And then you end with your transition sentence, right? Well, essays take this format that you've learned and they build on it to allow you to discuss topics in more depth than you can do within the limitations of a paragraph. They are made up of multiple paragraphs, and like paragraphs, they have a pretty predictable structure. So the structure of an essay is kind of like the structure of a paragraph stretched out, but you'll still use the same structure you've used in the individual paragraph. So you have an introduction, you have the body paragraphs, and the conclusion. And just like in a paragraph, your introduction kind of functions like your topic sentence. Your body paragraphs kind of function like your exposition, and your conclusion kind of functions like your transition sentence. Within those sections, you have subparts. So in your body paragraphs, this should be familiar. There's normally 3 of them in an essay. And you'll have a topic, sentence, exposition, and transition sentence. Well, in the introduction, you have a hook, which introduces kind of the point of the paper, draws the reader in. You have some context, which is the meat, so to speak, of your introduction. Then you have your thesis, which is your roadmap. It outlines the purpose of your paper. In your conclusion, really the goal is just to kind of finish up, to give a barrier to the essay. So you're paraphrasing your thesis, then your meat is summarizing the main points, and you'll end with a so what statement, why it's important. And this is not altogether different from what we've been doing so far. It's just there's more parts, but the parts function similarly. So some main similarities and differences: there are more paragraphs in an essay than in a single paragraph. Obviously, there are normally 5 in a traditional 5-paragraph essay. So your introduction, your 3 body paragraphs, and your conclusion. The paragraphs can be shorter because you have more space to work with. In fact, the essays that you're going to write are probably not going to be more than a few sentences, maybe 5 or 6 sentences longer than the paragraphs that you've been writing. So it's not like you're going to be writing 5 times as much. You'll just be dividing it a little bit differently. And it isn't always 5 paragraphs. We'll start with 5-paragraph essays because that's kind of the easiest way to learn to do it. It allows you to match the thesis with the 3 body paragraphs in a really nice way. But in fact, the reason we teach the 5-paragraph essay so much is that form can be used for just about any type of academic writing. So if you're writing a dissertation that's 250 pages, well, you might have an introductory section, you'll have your body sections, and then you'll have a concluding section. And each of the chapters will likely have an introduction, kind of a body section, and a conclusion, and maybe each section of the chapter will have the same thing. On the opposite end, in paragraph, you've kind of seen the paragraph as the essay form really shrunken down. So it still has typically about 5 to 7 sentences. It has a introduction in the form of the topic sentence, it has the body in the form of the exposition, and it has the conclusion in the form of the transition sentence. So that's why we really stress this particular essay form. There are others, but we stress this one because it is so flexible, and it is really the foundation of any type of writing that you use. It's just a matter of shrinking or expanding the parts. Your body paragraphs will use the same structure as the paragraphs you've written so far. Really, the paragraphs you've written so far are body paragraphs, except there will normally be 3 of them in a short essay. And they still need to have their topic sentence, the transition sentence, and exposition. Those things don't disappear just because we're adding new elements. Okay, so some other differences, some things that we're going to start adding on, you're going to start learning to do. The thesis statement is normally the last sentence in the introduction, and it is the single most important sentence in the essay. It provides a roadmap for the reader, and you'll want to state your claim and main points in it. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we craft those later, and we'll talk about a formula to make it pretty easy. You'll also have introductions and conclusions. Introductions function like a really long topic sentence, and they ease the reader into the paper, attract the reader's attention. They normally end with the thesis statement, which, as I said, it kind of outlines the paper for the reader and for you. It gives you something to refer back to as you're writing. If you start going off on a tangent or you start getting distracted, you can always come back to that thesis, and it can help ground you. One really good way to write an essay is to use the thesis statement as sort of a mini outline. I've taught that way before, and that can help you to ground yourself and really make it a lot easier to write the paper. Conclusions will feel really repetitive. I know a lot of students will kind of shy away from them because they feel like they're saying the same thing that they've said elsewhere, and that's the point. I know it feels weird, but you do need to paraphrase your thesis. You do need to recap your main points, and the point there is to remind the reader of what you've said and to kind of help bring it all back and summarize it. So for it to feel like you're wrapping up and tying a bow on that box, you need to repeat some stuff. You don't want to repeat it word for word, but you do want to kind of repeat the content of it. In fact, really the only new part of your conclusion is the last sentence, which is the so what statement at the end. And that can make them really easy to write because you've already got the information in other parts of the essay if you know where to look for it. So here's kind of the general structure of an essay. You have your introduction. At the end of your introduction is your thesis statement. And then you have your 3 body paragraphs, and then you end with your conclusion. Here's the kind of the same thing with another hamburger. So your top bun is your introduction, your bottom bun is your conclusion, and in the middle is your fillings. This is very similar to the paragraph one we looked at earlier. Remember the topic sentence, transition sentence, and the exposition. Topic sentence was the top bun, the transition sentence was the bottom bun, and the stuff in the middle was the exposition. So this is kind of to illustrate, yep, we're stretching it out. We're making this the same form that you've used so far, we're just making it longer. And I'm way too amused by the essay burger of epic proportions because a teacher was really having fun with the way we use these burgers. And so here is a really long essay burger. And it kind of goes through each of the steps in writing an essay. So your hook is another word for your introduction sentence. The step 2, 1 to 2 sentences providing background is your context. The thesis statement was where we'll end in this one. In some higher level classes, you'll talk about the plan of development, but we're going to combine 3 and 4. And then you can see same thing, topic sentence. Here, 4 is the transition sentence. Here's your IPA here. Same thing here, same thing here. And then they call the paraphrase thesis synthesize. Explain why these arguments matter, so what. And then the last 2 parts are for a different kind of essay. But it's very similar to what we've been talking about here. and it kind of gives you a big breakdown of a huge burger and all of this put together. So your general approach to writing essays, what's the time on that? Okay, it looks like a lot of steps, but I've really kind of broken down multiple steps into, or sometimes would be one step into multiple steps to kind of help guide you through the process. So the first thing you're going to do is analyze the prompt, then you're going to do some pre-writing. You're going to write a thesis statement. From the thesis statement, you really do want to create a rough outline, especially as you first start getting used to doing this. Then draft the body, and then draft the introduction and conclusion. From there, it's revising, editing, and proofreading. So why do I tell you to draft the body first instead of drafting the introduction first? Well, what tends to happen when you start with the introduction is you sit there and you're going, oh God, I need to come up with a good hook. And you just stare at that blank page because you don't know where to go with it yet. Well, that wastes a lot of time, and you'll often end up, if you start there, you'll often end up with a paper that goes in all sorts of different directions, doesn't have a strong structure, is actually a lot harder to write, and doesn't work as well. If you start with the body, you probably already know from your pre-writing what you want to put in the body, especially if you've got your thesis statement. So you're going to go ahead, you're going to start with what you already know you want to write, get that on the paper, and as you're writing your body, you're going to probably find some really cool fact that you came up with, or some information, or you realize what you need to put at the beginning, and you'll get the information for that introduction as you're writing the body. You can just jot it off to the side. And then the conclusion, as I said, is pretty much just paraphrasing. Most of it is paraphrasing what you write in the body. So you'll paraphrase what you write in the body, and then you can go back to your introduction to find your so what statement. It won't be word for word, but the main takeaway that you want for the reader will likely be somewhere, or will occur somewhere as you're writing your introduction. So if you start with the body, then write the introduction, then write the conclusion, you're really writing it in the order that the information is going to appear to you, or that the ideas are likely to come to you. So it's a lot more efficient, and you're less likely to spend time with writer's block. You're actually a lot more likely to get the essay done, to get it done well, and for it to be a lot easier than starting with the introduction. So we're going to stop here for this one, and then we're going to come back to analyzing the prompt and pre-writing and kind of talking some more about those two sub-steps. So I'll be right back in just a few minutes.